Okay. We have a microphone. I don't know why. Is this like really noisy when I'm not speaking, or what's going on? What does it sound like? Because the little green bar says the little green bar says like minus 40 decibels. That seems like a lot of decibels. Okay, I guess it's fine. How do I put this back? We'll wait a couple minutes for people to show up. What's going on? How are things? How are things? I'm going to plug my chat in so we don't run out of batteries. Where am I? I am now in Knoxville, Tennessee. So that is what is going on. All right. I'm going to have to move the microphone, I realize. Because I put it where my mouse hand wants to go. So hopefully this doesn't put it into freak out mode when I move it. It might happen. Have I played Splunky 2? Yeah, I played it on stream. Am I touring the whole U.S.? Whole U.S. is probably a little too big, but I'm going around. Found some other code that outputs code view padding, and it also decrements. Okay. Well, good. Good for everybody. Purpose to my trip. Well, it's vaguely just to have somewhere sane to work because air in California was unbreathable when I left. But also, it's generally to find possibly a different place to live that is better than the trash heap that California is becoming. And that's a very sad thing to say. I was born in California. I lived there most of my life. But it is very badly run by people who make all their decisions based on, like the worst kind of political ideology that at no point meets like evidence in any way, right? Like nobody running California looks at what actually works and does that and looks at what doesn't work and doesn't do that. That's just not how things are there, and so it's just continually going downhill. It's like the most basic thing that you want somebody who's in charge of something to do, they don't do. From the outside, you always got the impression that California is the most politically progressive state. It's up there for sure. New York might be more, depending. Ever thought of going to politics? No, I want nothing to do with politics. Concerning standard libraries, have I any plans for networking standards? What kind of networking standards are you talking about? Vermont is the most democratic state statistically, and it has no income tax for companies. And you also freeze your ass off there in the winter. So think about that. How about Las Vegas? I would consider Las Vegas. It's not high up on my list, but I know some people who live there, and you can always find things to do. It's a little hot in the summer. Is it the progressive policies themselves that hurt California, or is it simply politicians bad at managing stuff? I mean, I think that second factor is much worse than the first factor. Like, if people were actually good at managing stuff, then it doesn't matter that much what side they're on, as long as they're making the situation good, trying to make the situation good, right? Then they'll succeed sometimes. I just, I want government by people who are reality based, and we just don't seem to have that anywhere. Was the sky actually orange? Yes, the videos you saw were accurate. All right, so we'll give people 1 or 2 more minutes to show up, and then we will continue off where we left yesterday, and it's going to be a little bit entertaining, to be honest, because I found something today. Yeah. Struct sadness? What is struct sadness? I mean, any theories why politics aren't data science driven? I think it's the low level of education of the population, honestly. After watching your streams a bunch, I started disabling feature after feature in my IDE, and now I feel much better without a bunch of stuff popping up right into my face, so thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, that stuff triggers your startle reflex as a human being. You're like, what is this shit? It keeps you from, well, it certainly keeps me from focusing and getting things done. I don't want any of that. And it also prohibits flow states. That's like a thing that people designing all of these don't seem to understand or care about. Big companies are in California and seem to run above average. Maybe they're leaving. Dude, technology companies are doing their best to get out of California right now. The problem is just so many of them are so big and so anchored there. But all of these, these companies announcing, hey, you're free to work remotely. What they're also thinking is, and by the way, if we do an office somewhere, it's going to be in another state. Like we're gradually going to move our headquarters if we decide that working remotely doesn't work out. That's what they're thinking. Because it's insane. Running a company in California right now is terrible. It's gotten over the past few years, just more and more laws keep getting passed, and it's crazy balls at this point, dude. Am I in the same boat as Casey in that classes are essentially dumb? Yeah, I mean, I don't know that dumb is the word that I would use because they probably seemed like a good idea at the time. But they have proven to be not a very good way to organize a program, generally speaking. There are some rare cases where something like that makes sense. But because those aren't the majority of a program, you don't need to design a language around them. You just do that kind of data organization and you get the benefit. You decided for your most recent project, you decided to drop public-private entirely and just make everything public. It's seriously so good. Yeah, well, okay. Private only, the only time when private matters is when signaling intent on large teams. And it doesn't even do that good of a job at that. But what it says is, oh, you probably don't want to mess with this. That's all it means. You could find some other way of saying that. What kind of laws has California passed? Well, they basically prohibited independent contracting. Now with a bunch of like exceptions that are being snuck in due to corruption of various industries. So that's terrible. There's mandatory state required education if you have a job at any company over 5 employees now, starting in January. So if you work at any company, you have to take, and I'm sure very thrilling, online anti-harassment class every 2 years and file proof that you've done that with your employer. There's just a lot of laws about who you could hire and who you can't hire. There's a lot of compliance. You know, if you're a company, it just takes like the amount of friction. Like if you own a company, the amount of friction has been going up every year in terms of just the number of things you have to comply with. Yeah, the mandatory education thing is new. That's it was passed over a year ago, but they delayed it for a year to give people time to be able to comply. But it becomes mandatory January 1st, 2021. And then just the taxes are crazy. And then they started passing all these laws because California is broke right now. They started passing all these laws. Well, they keep raising taxes, right? But they started passing laws like that affect companies like mine very directly. So, you know, we release games in some years. And, you know, the games make most of their money because they're single player games. They make most of their money the year that they come out, right? And then we run off that money for a while. And so what that looks like is the company posts a profit, and then we post losses for some years until we release the next game, and then we do a profit again, right? And the way taxes work is, in general, you apply the losses from the years that you take losses to previous years where you made a profit. And it's just sort of the way of not discouraging long-term R&D, or it's sort of the way of not screwing you for having a cycle like that, right? It's like, okay, well, it looked like you made all that profit that year and you paid taxes on that, but then you get some of it back later, right? California was like, in June of this year, they passed a law where they said, yeah, we're broke, so we're not going to let you do that with California taxes anymore. Surprise, you might have been expecting that money back, but you don't get it. And like, you just can't run a business when they're doing stuff like that to you. What do I think is the bigger performance bottleneck, the language choice or intelligence of the programmer? I don't know if it's exactly intelligence, but but definitely the ability of the programmer to do a good job is primary above all else. But language is a huge factor. Why are Fang still in California with all this? Because the cost of moving immediately would be enormous. But I guarantee you, all these companies have plans to move gradually over time and have more like a token presence in California. I guarantee you. Do you find that composition instead of inheritance sacrifices type safety, e.g. casting a pointer to the outer struct? I mean, okay, this is a little bit weird because you're talking about this rule, prefer composition over inheritance. And I don't think that's a good rule either. Like, what they mean by composition is just very specific and is also usually unnecessary. So, no, I don't find that preferring composition sacrifices type safety. But also, I sort of dispute the premise of the question. Do the data-oriented design or FP communities have something like design patterns they share? I mean, there's a little bit of that, but honestly, I do not plug into either of those communities very seriously. To where? I think different companies are thinking about going different places. They just all want to be the hell out of California at this point. How do you design allocators for use with generic containers? Those two things are orthogonal. I don't. You would need to ask a more specific question, like, what's your goal? What's your goal? So my company is in San Francisco right now, is the headquarters, and then we have a number of people who work and live in different states, and we're just becoming more remote. Like, I'm not going to live in California anymore. I have to get the hell out of there. So, yeah. You see Emacs. All right. All right, everybody. We're going to get started programming, I think. Do you remove all comments from files before parsing? No, you just skip over the comment during parsing. It's very easy. It's just like if you see an identifier, you just, like for a C style comment, you see the slash and the star and you say, okay, now I'm in comment mode. And you just go into a different mode and you eat all characters until you see the closing thing, right? For C++ style comments, you just go till a new line. But it's very easy. It's not like, if you think this is complicated, you're probably making it too hard. Like, you're probably thinking about looking at what's inside the comment as like words and trying to skip them. No, you don't do that. It's like one of the fastest loops in a compiler is the loop that blasts through comments in parsing. All right. I'm going to split the stream right now to cut off all the ranting about California. And then we'll start. So, sorry, I need some water. I'm going to die of coronavirus on stream. Okay, wow. Okay, so my problem is they don't have any tea at this hotel where I am. It's a sacrilege. All right, I'm stopping the stream. It'll be back in 1 second.